Everybody, my name is Tiara Labrada. I am the Associate Director of Advocacy and Outreach at the Supportive Housing Network of New York. Thank y'all for coming today. Thank y'all. Okay. I'm here with my esteemed colleagues here. We are here to talk about the Readying Emerging Leaders in Supportive Housing Leadership Development Program that the network, along with my colleagues here, put together specifically targeted to Black people working in supportive housing. So it was a program created for us, by us. We graduated our very first cohort in March of this year, and we are really excited to bring this here to y'all. That's right. That's right. So I'm going to give y'all a quick rundown of what we're going to do here today. First, we're going to talk about the Racial Equity and Supportive Housing Work Group, which is sort of Relish was the brainchild of that work group, right? And we'll talk a little bit about how that work group got started, why it got started, some of the work that the work group had put in before Relish began. And then we'll go through sort of the development process, what it meant to collaborate with the Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College, what it was like to be a mentor in that program and also to sponsor staff, and then the Relish from a scholar's perspective. So I'm really excited to run through the entire breadth of the program with you all today. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce our esteemed panel over here. And let me tell y'all something. This is a very accomplished group of people sitting up on this dais here. So can we just give a round of applause to our folks here? Very accomplished group of people. So much so that I know this is a 90-minute panel, but if I had kept all of their bios at the length that they were given to me, then we would have never gotten to the actual panel. So I took the liberty of just cutting it down just a little bit. So you might not hear some of the things that you sent me, but I had to cut it down just for time. So right here, I'm going to introduce Chinetta Mitchell. Chinetta is the Assistant Vice President of Supportive Housing at Lantern Community Services. Give it out for Chinetta. Chinetta oversees the management of multiple permanent housing units. Chinetta is a graduate of NYU, where she obtained her Master's of Social Work in 2009. While working to become a licensed social worker, Chinetta became a certified life and recovery coach in 2015 and a licensed social worker in 2020. In her abundance of free time, which apparently she has a lot of, she proudly serves her community by offering therapy to victims and survivors of gun violence. And Chinetta is one of the graduates of our inaugural cohort of the Readying Emerging Leaders in Supportive Housing program. So thank you so much, Chinetta. Next, I will introduce Dr. Patricia Gray. Patricia Gray is a licensed clinical social worker who graduated from Columbia School of Social Work in 1990 and received her doctorate in education and leadership from St. Sorry. You wanted me to cut that part out? Okay, sorry. She graduated from Columbia School of Social Work yesterday and received her doctorate in education and leadership from St. John Fisher University in 2019. Recently, Dr. Gray completed her certification as an Afrocentric social work practitioner as part of her commitment to lifelong learning and development. Okay, shout out. Dr. Gray has over years of experience providing services in mental health, child welfare, early intervention, homeless services, supportive housing, addiction services, and academia. See, I told you I can't. It's a lot. It's a lot. Very accomplished group. Thank you, Dr. Gray. Okay, hold on. All right, Mark Jennings. Mark Jennings is the newly appointed Executive Director of Project Find. He began with the organization in 2018 and was the Deputy Executive Director? Sorry.
It was both, Deputy and
Mark wore many hats at Project Find and then was appointed Executive Director in 2023. So he was, shout out to Relish for that promotion. No? Okay. Can we put that up on the slide? Okay. Prior to his appointment, he was the Associate ED overseeing the social services, property management, and accounting departments. Mr. Jennings also works as an adjunct professor at Nyack College. Prior to joining Project Find, he served as the Director of Housing for Community Access, where he managed more than 800 units of supportive and transitional housing. Mark has also worked in various social justice arenas and as a journalist. He holds a bachelor's in print journalism from Howard, a master's in divinity from Harvard, and a master's of social work from the Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College. Okay, shout out Mark Jennings. And last but certainly not least is Nicole Clare, who is the Chief Real Estate Development Officer at Bowery Residence Committee, also known as BRC, having joined the organization in April of 2017. Prior to BRC, Nicole was the Director of Housing Development for Settlement Housing Fund, where she spearheaded all housing development projects. Prior to that, she was the Community Development Project Manager at Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation. Nicole was recently featured as a 2022 Notable Black Leader by Crane's New York Business. Okay? I told y'all. She holds a BA from Brown University and a master's in city planning from the University of Pennsylvania. Y'all, I know we've been clapping a lot, but one more time. And I would be remiss. So this group, I'd say Nicole, Dr. Gray, Mark, and myself, helped to put this program together, but also with the help of Diane Luard-Michel, who is the Executive Director of Lantern Community Services, Jeanette Ruffins, who is the Executive Director of Homeward NYC, and Fred Shack, who is the Executive Director or CEO of Urban Pathways, right? So I'd be remiss if I did not mention those three folks who really, without their help and support and leadership, this program would have not gotten off the ground. So one more time. We're going to clap a lot. So we're going to be clapping a lot today, y'all. So without further ado, Mark, I'm gonna pass it off to you. That's my phone. Okay, you want to use this? Yeah. Or are you going to walk down there? Okay. He has a master's of divinity and from Harvard, y'all.
I don't know how to turn on microphones, though. All right. Yeah, I just needed to move around. Sorry. So, my job is probably the easiest job is say a little bit, then sit down. But it's just sort of set what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So we hear relish. But there's this resh. And then what is resh? What is relish? What are all these acronyms to begin with? So first I just want to say, before relish, which is what we're here to talk about, readying emerging leaders in supportive housing, yes. Got it right this time, program. And there was resh, racial equity in supportive housing work group. Couldn't throw that W in there somehow, just didn't work. But resh. And so resh is an affinity organization that started along the way when, I know I got to talk personally. When I was things were burning on Fordham Road in the Bronx where I live. I live right around all y'all housing that y'all building in my neighborhood, and I'm happy for it. And so Fordham Road was burning up the street, 2020. We were in the heart of the pandemic, and nurses and people in the medical field got a lot of accolades during that time. But folks in here were still at work too, and catching the subway. And I remember going to Times Square and being by myself, walking to the supportive housing that I worked through. Some of you all did that. That was an eerie time. So we had the eeriness of COVID, and then we had the Bronx burning again, and other places around the city because of the racial injustice. And as a part of that, one of the things that I was trying to figure out was, what can I do? Because I want to go out and throw rocks with other people, but I'm not trying to go to jail. And my kids probably wouldn't like that, and my wife probably wouldn't like that, and my job wouldn't like that. So what can I do? And part of that became sort of thinking through, okay, how can, we can't save the world, but how in my industry, in supportive housing, can I find a way to make a difference? And so we're going to get into some of that, but I wanted to sort of start a little bit about where is this born. And so this vision of a group of people coming together. I want to thank Nicole for helping us through our vision statement. None of us are paid through this organization, We just come together and in the beginning, when they say work group, what I was told in the beginning was that I don't want to go to any organization, any other meeting where we're going to just sit and talk. We need to do work. And so that's where the work group part was formed. But again, volunteers started in 2020. Obviously, we're here in New York with the stakeholders identify as Black. Our mission is to advocate for policies and practices that advance racial and wage equity and improve the quality of life for Black people connected to the supportive housing sector. You know, the why, we know the why, right? So in a part of the class sessions, one of the things I was helping to lead in the beginning sessions, and we did little exercises. So I want to do a little exercise for a second, and I just want the men to stand up, if you will. Just quickly. If you identify as a male, stand. All right, great. All right, you can have a seat. If you identify as a woman, you may stand. All right, excellent. And what is that telling us? All right. And if you identify as a Black woman, please stand. All right, and what is that telling us? So I learned a lot when I connected, especially around, you know, the rulers of the world in the sector and the rightful rulers of the world are Black women. And so though we're talking about Black people, Tierra always made me put emphasis on Black women in every group to remind me that it's Black people and Black women, right? That Black women really hold the sector together. And so, you know, in terms of our why, we know the why, because you're doing the work, because you're here. And so how can you get to the places of advancement to become program directors, to become you know, deputy directors, and all the different titles, vice president of this, vice president of that, all the various different titles that are out there. How can I grow? How can I move up? And it's not a lot of jobs, you know, it's like that cone that comes in, the triangle. And so it's a lot of jobs at the bottom. And then it starts, that competition starts to sort of seep in. And so how can you get an edge in that field? And how can you do that if I don't have a degree? How can I do that if I didn't have the opportunity to go to get a master's? Or I don't have a bachelor's. We have some people who and this was designed for all of the above, right? But especially for those who might not have had that opportunity to get the master's degree, to be more attractive on paper, or to just have that knowledge to be able to sort of really move forward. But before even 2020, there was, when I was at Community Access, we had hiring committees, and I realized in that space that we had people who came to hiring committees who looked like me, who didn't always get the job. And I was wondering why, because I was sitting, some of them say, I thought that was the smartest person that I've ever seen in my life. They're smarter than me. But they didn't get the job, and I was trying to understand, and internally, I was seeing more external people come in, and internal people weren't necessarily getting the jobs. And so I was sat back, and I'm thankful for Kyle Hedigan. I'm thankful for everybody at Community Access because of the openness there to really examine processes. And so one of the things that we put in place was this, so you want to be a service coordinator. Well, what was that? That was a group for people who were front desk staff who wanted to move up. So what we did was we took them in and said, here's the things that you need to think about as a front desk staff if you want to be a service coordinator. You know, what can you do in your position? It's not your position right now, because they would always get in trouble for being social workers and service coordinators to the folks. And it's like, well, that made me a service coordinator. No, that actually was against policy and rules. And so if you do that, that's not going to endear you to your process of being able to move up. So helping them to understand, how do you make a referral? What does that mean? How do you work inside of the boundaries of your position? How do you, you know, expand yourself as well, but maybe do that by running a formal group. Now you can then work in a way where you can demonstrate your service coordination, case management sort of skills. And so that was front desk. We did one for program directors. And so this So You Want to Be kind of series is really the precursor to some of the work of what is Relish. Because Relish is really about, when I went through the process, I felt alone. I didn't realize that it was a whole room full of people right here, because I wasn't connected to that. And Relish is about really connecting people to each other, so we know who we are. In the field, when we're in the rooms, we feel alone. I mean, I might be alone and feeling alone. Am I alone and feeling alone in some of the rooms? I didn't think so. I just wanted to hear y'all say that. But that's what this is really about. Another thing is, in terms of timeline, we told you the Bronx was burning. And so what I did was I went to Shinny, I went to the network, and I went to CSH, and I said, look, I want to do this series for workers. And I didn't say black workers per se. I said for essential workers in supportive housing. That's black workers and brown workers. But I said I want to do a series to really, people have been pouring into everybody else during this pandemic. We need to pour back into our workers. I want to do a series for those folks. And they said, all right, come talk to me a little bit later. Because essentially it wasn't no, but it was no. So I just did it at my organization. And that was what you see, this refueling series, called it the Virtual Refueling Series. Brought in Chef Rock from Hell's Kitchen, brought in Brandon Lloyd, who won Shark Tank, DJ 6 Cents. All people I know, I just called and said, can you do something free for me? We had a little Zoom party. We had healthy cooking. We talked about hair, how to get good hair and nails. And it was just about neo-soul yoga from California. Like all these things, this was done at night, 7 p.m. It was just to pour into the workers. And so that was the goal, was really just pour into the workers. And that trend, once that happened, then some lights came on. And people started connecting and saying, okay, well, now that turned into us meeting, and that turned into sort of moving into Relish. So Resh as an organization was about, we came together. There's a number of people here who have been in those early meetings, and we came together and thought about different sort of themes that we could work on. Pay equity and advocacy, DEI, housing development, leadership training, service delivery. So the Readying Emerging Leaders in Supportive Housing program is just one thing that came out of the leadership training. We've done a few other things, so you might have seen some of the flyers. We're connected to Just Pay, just like each of you all, so we continue to push there. During the sort of the vaccine push, we went out and found some black medical folks and people connected in the industry and brought that to folks to be able to think through together. We did some op-eds. We even did a little poetry contest last in Juneteenth, which actually raised a little bit of money for Homeward NYC's True Colors program and our homeless inReach program here in the nation. So we've been doing a number of things, and so Relish is one of many things. So when we want you to come join us with Resh as we continue to create more relishes and more other things that are sort of out there. In conclusion, for my part, what is Relish? Relish was a leadership program specifically for those who identified as black, specifically for those who worked in the supportive housing industry, and definitely in connection with Hunter, and you're going to hear a little bit more about the curriculum. We had a 6 weeks course, and we connected that with mentorship. So the scholars went through 6 weeks, but they also had 12 weeks of one-to-one mentorship from black professionals in the industry. And so, what I want to do, and there's community forever, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's going to come from Chinetta. But what I want to do is, I asked you to do one more standing exercise, just getting you awake, making sure you're awake. So I need the scholars. Can you stand that participated, because you're here.
Okay. Yeah. Wait. Stay there.
Sierra's got to get some pictures from this angle.
I do. Normally I would be on that side getting pictures, but I have to take them from this side.
Don't sit down. Don't sit down. You're not tired. All right. And mentors that are in the room, if you can stand as well. So, I see a few of y'all here.
Oh my God. I know.
Excellent. So during the cocktails, as we extend this to during the cocktail hour, make sure you see some of these folks here to talk about their experience. The awesomeness and the excellence is here, and it's in the future of the cohorts that are to come. So I'm gonna get out the way so we can really talk about relish. In the church they tell y'all to sit, but y'all supposed to stand for the rest of the time. Y'all just sat on your own. I don't know. I'm going to check you out. No, I'm just joking. And so I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Gray.
Thanks, Mark. So I want you to know that I have a lot of students in this room. So all of my students, please stand. That's right. Practice lab in the house. I love practice lab. And I think that you'll see that what I've been talking about in practice lab since 2014 is really part of what we're doing here. One of the things that I talk to my OIR students about is who is in the room, right? Because when you're in that room, you have all supervisors and managers because it's the OIR program, right? You're living what you're doing and you're in an administrative or case management role within your organization. And I just love it. So let me talk a little bit about relish from the perspective of I also was mentored. Fred Shack called me and he says, we're doing this program and I would like for you. And I said, yes. He says, no, Pat, you need to. I said, yes. And he went on. People know Fred Shack? Urban Pathways, right? Very clear on what he wants and how he wants it. And I said, okay. And he said, no, but this is what we need and this is how we need it. And I said, okay. He says, okay, then Pat, do it. So anyway, so for me, the collaboration started when Fred called me. And he said, I'm asking you. And I said, you can tell me. It's okay. You can tell me. Because when I used to work for Fred, he said to me, I said to him, I want to get into the shelter system because I was on the permanent housing side. And he said, Miss Gray, you're a great clinician, but you have no administrative skills. I was like, what? So I had to go back to school for 2 years and a postmaster's program at Hunter. So relish means a lot to me, in that it won't take you 2 years, right? It ain't gonna take you 2 years to get to that C-suite. So as I said, for me, in doing this program with Fred and everybody on the panel, was really great, and I really enjoyed it. We buckhead sometimes because with the budget, you gotta, right? Right here? It costs money. Everything costs money. But we'll figure it out. And that's what we do. We figure things out. So in terms of the curriculum, we looked at what were some of the things that needed to be done and how did we get those curriculum done. So Dr. Amer, he said to tell you guys hello. And he said he's still being covered and that he really missed not being here today. But I told him, well, I'm going to be here. So in terms of looking at the supportive housing and the collaboration that we needed to do, we started thinking about what the curriculum should look like. And I was intentional in talking with Dr. Amer, because I don't know if you remember Dr. Amer for the students in the room, and if you don't and you're going to do clinical next semester, he's teaching clinical. But he is clear about the work that we need to do and how we do supervision. What were some of the things that we need to look at and how we needed to do it? So we had about 27 folks who registered. And the registration included social workers, managers, social services staff, operations staff, and maintenance. And let me tell you, everybody in that room understood that we were working together, we were working to figure it out, and we wanted to make sure that everyone understood each other's role, because without understanding our roles, we can't get to the next level. Right? We can't participate thinking that, oh, I'm case management staff, and so therefore you do it. No, operations and maintenance are there longer than the social services staff. So they see our families in the nights. They see them on the weekends. And so the voices, when you start listening to how Dr. Amer had folks in the group and talking about supervision and talking about support and talking about how we relate, and do you understand the different programs within administration and supervision? And I was just standing there like, yeah. But it was great work. Right? It was really nice to hear. And then sometimes we get the questions that said, this is what we were doing. What can we do together? And let me tell you, the group, the cohort one, they were supportive of each other. They asked questions. They challenged each other. And most of all, they were respectful of each other. Right? So some of the other things that we saw, that we had a mixture in the curriculum. We had those who had master's degree, those who had bachelor's, and those who did not have, what did you say, Mark? I like what you said, on paper. They didn't have that education piece on paper. But the years of experience that they had in that room really went a long way. And so as we talked about how we went about in doing the work, it was really good. So we looked at topics like supportive housing work initiatives. We looked at missions. We looked at purposes. We looked at expectations. We looked at leadership skills development. What are some of the issues around diversity and leadership? Board development, advocacy, right? How do you align organizational mission and vision with your own sense of self? The lens of the organizational structure, effective strategies, budget and finance, right? Because if you don't understand budget and finance, you really are going to get lost in what needs to happen. And then we talked about data and quality assurance. How are you doing supervision? How are you understanding your outcomes for your programs? What are some of the things that you now need to go back and think about that you need to get done? And then how do you link those grants that the organization have and the data-driven and the report writing, right? Because if it's not written down, it didn't happen. Would we agree? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when we start talking about mentoring, Mark and everybody really thought about what are some of the ways that we can then link the participants with those mentors. And if you don't think that you're a mentor, take a look at the mirror and say, what am I doing with my staff? What are some of the issues and concerns that I'm seeing? Where am I? Where do I want to go? And how do I get my staff to go? All right? So I think that we had some great things going. We looked at new skills development. We talked about the purpose of supervision. We looked at human resources as capital. We looked at leadership styles, and we did impact and impact, right? And we talked about how we progressed and what were some of the areas that we do. And I know that I didn't move my slides, but that's what happened when I start talking, but it's okay. So I'll move it to show you that we're finished, right? I'm going the wrong way. So that's Dr. Amer. And again, I know I just started chatting and I just get away, right? So I'm going to turn it over. Yes? Okay. Oh, voices from the field. So the voices from the field, Mark did a lot of work in bringing in the voices from the field to talk with the folks. And these are some of the folks that did it. We did Zoom in the classroom, so some folks who could not be in person did it. We had somebody from California, right, who participated. But the voices from the field, the participants in the room really liked that because they are the ones who are out there doing the work. And that really helped to solidify for participants and let them understand that you're not only doing the work, but you can enjoy what you're doing. Because that's one of the takeaways that I had. Anyone saw anything that you would love to just say from Voices from the Field? Any of the participants? Anything stood out?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Stand up, Rodney, please.
So the Voices of the Field sections of each class that really spoke to that experience for us. You can study theory all day and read all the books and the process, but hearing from the direct, there you go. But from hearing directly from people who were a part of a process was very helpful. One of the ones that jumped out to me that I remember very distinctly was one of the Voices from the Field who spoke about finance and mentioned discovering that their supervisor had embezzled quite a large sum of money from the organization just by, them the process of doing their work. They were just doing their work, minding the numbers and realizing what was going on, and them talking to us about how they navigated realizing their own direct supervisor has so thoroughly violated the expectations. That was very insightful for us. It stuck out to me. It's very important to really understand how to get through those tough times from people who have been through those tough times. So those are really great portions of the curriculum.
Absolutely, they were. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Nicole Clare to come forward, please.
Thank you, Dr. Clare.
Thank you. Afternoon, everyone. I'm actually going to jump ahead a little bit, just because, as Tiara mentioned, in many ways, I wore a couple different hats, right? So as part of the work group, that small group that kind of put the program together, that was an incredible amount of work. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more later. But also my organization was one of the sponsors. So Natasha, who's sitting in the room, was one of our program directors that we sponsored in the program. And thinking through, this is just a short list of other organizations that were sponsors, but thinking through what that took for those organizations to put scholars ahead to this program. It was a new program. What does that mean? A little bit of sort of taking risks as well as putting up some money. We did ask for some money to support the program itself. But as having Dr. Gray, Pat in the room, the connection to Hunter College really was critical to helping make that decision, right? Something that's new that we're figuring out. It was the leaders of the work group, right? Fred Shack, that the name that resonates around the world, but Jeanette, Diane, Mark, et cetera, who put the program together, as well as that connection to Hunter to really legitimize the very new program to the leaders. I wrote here, white leaders. Let's be clear, right? We're talking about race, we're talking about black leaders, white leaders. That's always a question, right? When you get extra scrutiny, extra concern. And you can't say that's always necessarily an easy decision to make, right? There, in the back of your mind, some people still had the questions of, well, can we do this for black leaders only? And you get the whole HR question, but all of those organizations were able to work through it, luckily. In our case as well, that decision was tied to our commitment to DEI, right? The fact that this program came post-2020, post-racial reckoning, a different time that maybe it came 5 or 10 years earlier. And really it was our chief equity officer, who was fairly recent at the time, started in 2022, who was able to shepherd it through the organization, and it really was a natural connection to the DEI work. She helped steward the program. And then also to reinforce the intentional, as I mentioned with the DEI efforts, the importance of being intentional regarding black leadership and professional development, right? There are a million studies, continue to be many, many more studies released about, as Mark mentioned, that cone of our industry. Blacker and browner at the bottom, very white at the top. So that we need to be intentional about making a change on that front. So that was the sponsor perspective. And then, as we mentioned, a critical component was tying mentors with the scholars, really linking them up. So I think I can go back the other direction. to give you a perspective. And again, we thank Mark. Mark spends an incredible amount of time. I think he doesn't sleep. But doing these kinds of efforts, right? We collected pictures. We're able to connect folks, mentor, mentee. The next slide really goes into that. As we said, looking intentionally, trying to match scholars to other senior leaders that made sense, right? If you're working in clinical, someone with that clinical background, we asked them specifically, sort of the middle column, as you said, is the areas of expertise that the scholars wanted to work on and connecting to what the areas of expertise that the mentors had. So, you know, clinical, HR to HR, administrative, this just gives you a general sense of what that looked like. So I think it was also critical, I think this sort of the next slide, is Diane speaking in the middle of speech, of having these mentor orientation sessions as well, right? Letting mentors, as we recruited mentors, letting them know what the program was going to be like, what their expectations were going to be, and hearing from them also that they appreciated developing community, that they're also seeking other Black leaders in the field, getting to know people, that everyone is looking to learn from others, that it was unique in the fact that it's targeted mentoring, right? When we speak about mentoring generally versus the opportunity to specifically mentor someone, another Black leader working in the supportive housing field, right? That targeted. You know, obviously connecting Black leaders with each other, bringing mentors together. We also had an opportunity, you know, in addition to the orientation throughout the process, as we mentioned, that 12 weeks, every other week responsibility, bringing them together initially, but also periodic check-ins to say what's working, what's not working, you're having a hard time reaching your scholar, those kinds of things. And recognizing that mentoring is an ongoing process. As we saw in one of the first slides, community is forever, but also mentoring is forever, right? So there's a short window of time where it was a regular relationship. I'm quite sure, and we hear stories of scholars still tapping their mentors, right? I have this interview. I'm interviewing for the next level in my organization. How can we prepare for that? You know, as things come up in your career, obviously it's a life career you've decided in the industry, who you can call on to give you that level of support. And, you know, and it was a range. If we think about the mentoring, you know, some had experience in mentors, some did not. There is, you know, us thinking about lessons learned and how we might think about it in the future in terms of expectations, creating more of a formal structure. So that is my piece. And then let's hear from a scholar themselves on the whole process, and that is Chinetta Mitchell.
The podium is almost taller than me, y'all. I should have put on shoes today, right? So I'll stand over here. Good afternoon, everyone. Just talking about the application process, what really happened is that my CEO made the decision that she saw something in me that she felt that I should be part of this program. So she recommended that I become part of the program. I do the application. And the application was, you know, not because she recommended me, I was going to be the one chosen. There were other folks chosen that were in the agency who had to go through the application process as well. So I was very happy to be chosen when it happened. I was like, wow, this is happening. This is exciting. And thinking of really wanting to really build my career and do something different and not always stay in the same position and wanting to do something different. This was an opportunity for me to show my skills, my leadership skills, and to learn more leadership skills and what I can do from there. So this was just a wonderful opportunity. I just want to talk about the classroom a little bit. I know we talked about voices from the field. We talked about a whole lot of things, but I really want to give the panel up here some credit as well, because one of the things that happened in the classroom that I really enjoyed, I didn't speak about before, was Jeanette, Mark, Dr. Gray, Dr. Amer, you know, they were on a panel like this in the classroom explaining to us their education and work goals and what they went through, and it really allowed us to ask questions to see how that went. And that was really a good experience for us. At least I can speak for myself. And I see some of my co-scholars shaking their heads, so I think it was for them too. So I really want to thank you all for that, because that allowed us to really learn from your perspective in your positions of where you are now, what we could look forward to trying to come in those positions. Oh, that's the wrong way? Okay. I'm working it out, okay? So this here is a picture of our group chat. So one of the greatest things, they're laughing because they have not seen this before. So one of the greatest things that really came out of this for me is a connection to my co-students, all of us together. I rather, we're scholar students, but my connection. This group chat, we speak to each other almost every other day, and if we're not speaking to each other, someone will text you personally and say, hey, you dropped out the chat, what's going on? I'm just texting to check on you. And it's really about forming this community because as you can see, it's, hey, great job, Chinetta, look at you making history or something, someone else congratulating someone else for getting a raise. In this process, at least, I want to say 4 or 5 of us have been promoted and have gotten raises. And it's like, wow, That goes to show this program works. You're not here just to hear things. You're really here to learn. You're here to learn skills. You're here to learn some things from your mentor. Your mentors were there for you. They gave you really things that you can utilize and move forward with. It wasn't, oh, hey, how are you today? What's going on? No, this is what we want to learn. My mentor said to me, what do you want to learn? And I said, well, I want to know what it's like to be on a board. Or I want to know, because that's something I don't have any experience in, right? So I want to know what it's like to be on a board. Like, can I come to a board meeting? She's like, no, not yet. Maybe down the road, but not right now, right? But, I want to know what that's like because I don't have experience in that. So that's what this was. This was me speaking at the government, in front of the governor's office when we were doing the Just Pay Act, just trying to get money and support us. That was us that was me in Albany at one time, but just getting support from them was amazing because I would text them and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And it was like, you got this, you can do this, go, 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 go. And I'm not really a happy person speaking in public, but I'm getting better. But this is why, because of them, this is why they support us in this. I do want to touch on the supervision when we talked about supervision and really getting that classroom experience and supervision. Dr. Amer did a practice, I'm sorry, I'm losing my thought. What is it? Yeah, it's like he did like a training kind of thing with us. And what happened is he was asking questions about your supervision style. And you had to go on one side of the room if you did this or the other side of the room if you did that. What was interesting to me, and it happened to me, I was over here, I'm on this side of the room, right? And I start thinking, oh no, I got to go back on this side of the room, right? So it really allowed us to see what our styles was and what we could have done differently. And that was the most important thing I think that out of that session we got there. Like, how are you treating your supervisees? Are you really being there for them? Are you supporting them the way you should really support them? And running from the room back and forth, it was amazing, but then you realize, okay, this is where I really need to be. Or I was doing that incorrectly. I should take a look at me and see what I can do differently to support my supervisee. So I really did want to touch on that. And let me see what was next. So we talked about the raises. These are some of the ranges that some of us got raises, and anywhere from 3K to 18K people got increases after graduating the program. So what I will say, I think that's my last slide, but what I will say is this. When I started the program, I started as a senior program director, and after graduating, I've been promoted to an assistant vice president. So, woo! And to the panel and our developers and our people for the Rush and Relish program, I want to say thank you so much. And I'm speaking for myself and I'm sure the class, because we could have not done this without all of you. And thank you for thinking of us always, always. Lastly, I just thought of one other thing. We have now become part of the committee and subcommittees for the next cohort. That feels so amazing to be able to give our opinions and say, don't do this, you should do that, or we should do this differently. And I'm such a brat little baby. I got so jealous. They was like, oh, we're going to get a Google account and drop photos in a Google account. And I'm like, y'all didn't do that for us. But the good thing about it is about making it a better experience for the next cohort and making things work. And I'm so happy that we're all working together and continue to work together. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. I actually think this is a little bit better. All right, you're right, Mark. All right, so I tough acts to follow, but I do just want to talk. We talked a lot about how it felt to be in that program, what it was like with the collaboration from Hunter, what it was like to sponsor a participant and be a mentor. But there was a lot of collaboration and a lot of project management that went into the actual development of the programs. I'll just talk a little bit about the network's role and how we were responsive to the membership. So I know Mark says he came to the network with the opportunity to do a training series, and we passed on that. That's maybe okay, fair. But he also came back and said, Tiara, can you give me a list of the Black senior leaders in supportive housing? And I was like, oh, Fred, Diane, Mark, you, Jeanette, I don't know. There was only a handful of folks that we could come to. And then we put out a statement after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and a host of others during the 2020 uprisings. And Mark said, you are the network. You put out this statement. You are a leader in the field, right? I appreciate you thinking that of us. And you have the infrastructure. And if you say that your members should do this, maybe people will follow. And so he came to us with the idea of developing this racial equity and supportive housing work group, but we only had a handful of folks that we could direct him towards. And so one of the things that I did, we have 200 members statewide, and I took an audit of our membership. I looked at all 200 members. I looked on websites. I looked in our database. And I developed a spreadsheet of the people who I thought were Black based on names and pictures, if there was some available. People who I knew were Black. And I was like, okay, I think this is it. And of our 200 members, thousands of folks, the senior leaders, decision-making folks in supportive housing organizations, I came up with a list of less than 100. So fewer than 100 folks that I could identify in my very informal way that were Black decision-makers in the supportive housing sector. But what we did was send out an email to everybody and said, we are coming together with this group. And I'm sorry, there's a small photo of one of our first... Oh, geez, I'm going to go all back here. You can't really see it, but there's a photo back here of some of us, right? But on that first Zoom call that we had back in maybe October of 2020, there were, 50 people maybe on that call or something like that. Everybody Black, every small box on that Zoom was a Black person, and the energy that was felt in that room was palpable. We were all virtual, but every single person had their camera on. We didn't talk about any work. It was just how nice it felt in that moment after, the uprisings of 2020, during the pandemic, how good it felt to be sort of in community with each other. And that was a really beautiful feeling. And all of the work that Mark said came after that actually was born from that. So that was part of the things that we did. So how was it like to develop this leadership certificate program from the ground up? Because it was every single detail of the program was developed by Nicole, Mark, Fred, Jeanette, Diane, right? We met monthly for a little while, and then once we started picking up steam, we were meeting weekly, and these are not easy people to get in a meeting, okay? These are very important people who are leading organizations, who are managing staff, who are managing programs, putting out fires, doing a lot of stuff. And I'll tell you, every single week when we were supposed to be meeting, folks showed up and they were doing the work, and this was all voluntary. We had no funding for this program. No one gave us money for planning. No one gave us money for scholarships. No one gave us money to do anything. We were doing this all voluntary, all because there was a lot of passion and desire, and folks felt that it was really important. So the network provided the infrastructure. It provided me, someone who could schedule meetings and pull together agendas and take minutes and make sure that the ideas that were being developed in the meeting were actually sort of moving forward. We provided a lot of the communication infrastructure. So when we developed the application, we sent the application out, we hosted Zooms, all of the sort of back-end infrastructure and admin support that we had available to us, we provided that. The network also was the fiscal sponsor. So a lot of you sponsored participants. And we made sure that there was a conduit through which those payments could flow, that we could pay Hunter, that we could provide food. And we did all of that because we thought it was really important. And because, again, our members came to us and said, here is something that we want to do. And we saw the benefit and the beauty of what this program could actually provide. So that's really all I have to say about that, except for I'll say one more thing. Part of going through this program, I was like, hey, I want to be part of Relish. I want to be there. Like I never had a mentor. I never had like a leadership certificate program. I don't know what it's like to be. With our new executive director, this is my first time working for and with a Black woman ever, right? I've been working for the past 20 years and something, right? And I've never worked for and with a Black woman. So I think the importance of that one-on-one mentorship and working with a Black folks, someone that you could see in yourself and sort of aspire to, I thought was really great. And I just want to thank y'all personally. I know I said this before, but I didn't get one mentor. I got like 5. So I did get a lot of that mentorship, and I didn't get to do the curriculum and go through the program, but doing that, helping to develop this program and providing that project management and admin support actually helped me in my own professional development and leadership skills. So I'm just really grateful for that opportunity. So I think, I have some questions, but what we would really want to do is just open this up for the audience to ask questions. So please, I can come around with the mic. Folks can come up to the mic, whatever works best. But we really want to open it up. Here's our email addresses for folks who actually want to get involved. So take a photo, write it down, what else. But we're going to open it up to some questions.
And we have been asked for recording purposes, because they're recording, to use a microphone.
To use the mic.
If possible.
Okay. Yeah. No. You just said for recording purposes to use the microphone.
I'm hard-headed. So I missed the beginning. I was in the wrong room, but I quickly shot over here. I'm in the right one now. And this is really interesting because I actually pitched something like this to my agency to create. I work at Hartships and Vincent Services. I've been there for 7 years, and we have a multitude of programs. And I always wanted to learn about different programs. I was just always nosy and interested in what was happening in other areas. So I want to find out, how do I apply to a program like this? Is this open to all organizations who are SHINI involved? Mm-hmm. And if so, where do I get the application? Because I need it now. Yeah.
It's not yet open.
Okay.
We are working very hard on the second cohort. So believe me, as soon as, email Tiara to get on the list, be the first to find out. But as soon as that opens, we will let folks know. So it's for everybody. Obviously, if you have scholars in mind, typically... Yeah, we said identify as Black, and we also said obviously having some supervisory experience or position. Like that was a place that we also where we set the expectations, and then we showed a little screenshot of what some of those questions were, because we wanted people to be thoughtful. So if we think about what the application looks like, it is asking you those questions of what are you trying to get out of the program, what kind of skills do you want to need, what kind of skills do you want to learn more about. So that will help us connect you to a mentor. That'll help us shape the program as we shape it. As we think about even the next cohort, we laid out the current cohort, the first one, but we mentioned 6 sessions. We'll probably grow it to 8. We're talking about that, making that a little, and making certain tweaks to it. But stay tuned.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sabine. I'm from the New York City Department of Veteran Service. Thank you guys for putting this together. As someone who deal with a lot of Black veterans who do suffer a lot from mental health, and there are not a lot of Black providers that caters to that particular population. I wanted to know, do you guys have like a network of supportive housing set aside for perhaps Black veterans, or mental health providing services where it's Black providers helping Black veterans, or anything of that sort?
but I don't know.
That's a tough question. No, we don't have anything formal ourselves. We were just saying we believe there is an organization. Somebody in the room might know it.
Black Veterans for Social Justice, is that what it's called, based in Brooklyn? Is that right?
Yeah, BBSJ.
Yeah, BBSJ, specifically.
So there's an organization called Black Veterans for Social Justice, aka BVSJ. And as a member of the network, if you can shoot me an email, and we can put you in touch with some supportive housing providers that serve veterans, and you can connect with those folks. So we are a membership organization. We represent the nonprofits that develop and operate supportive housing, and we have over 100 members in New York City alone. So if there's a particular population of folks that you are curious about, if they're being served in the city, specifically being served in supportive housing, reach out to us, and we can help to connect you. That is one of the things that we can certainly do. My daughter's going to take the mic around. Go ahead.
Sasha and Jonathan, don't you do that? So give Sasha and Jonathan put up your hand, Sasha, please. Yes.
Hi, so my name is Sasha Gay Callum, and I'm from Jericho Projects. I work at the Kingsbridge Terrace site. We are a veteran-only supportive housing unit, so we currently house about 68 veterans now. So you can reach out to me, because we do cater to and give services to veterans, and majority of our population is Black as well.
Or maybe, Pat, you could talk about, didn't they mention in your bio sort of Afrocentric thinking at social work? So are like tips, what's different? What's different? I'm sorry to put you in the spot, but it sort of is an extension of the question.
Jonathan, you were going to say something before I say something? Go ahead.
Also, just to piggyback, Jericho Project, we do have supportive services for veteran families who also assist veterans with housing insecurities, with wraparound services, but also finding housing within NYC 5 boroughs.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, we have two, besides Kingsbridge Terrace, we have two other supportive housing programs. One, Fordham Village, which is right off of Fordham Road, that services just veterans. And then my program, Walton House, which if you came to my last talk, it's 56 veterans and 33 young adults. So we do have a veteran supportive housing, but as specific as she was talking about, that gets a little difficult, but we always try to match the services to what the client needs.
Mm-hmm. The Association of Black Social Workers also do a lot of work, and so we can always connect you to the Association of Black Social Workers, where they do a lot of community services. The year-long program that I went to was really about thinking how to go back to understanding what are the needs of the Black community and how we respond to the Black community.
Hi, my name is Carmela Nicholas. I'm also with Jericho Project.
Hey, Jericho. Shout out to Jericho.
So I am the Assistant Director for Home Base, and we provide services also to veterans. If they're not interested in supportive housing, we can also house them. Thank you.
And maybe you can start a group.
That's right. That's right.
Maybe you can start an alliance, yeah?
Yeah, so Chinetta, thank you for sharing your experience about the classroom. Could you walk us through, like, what a day of curriculum at Hunter for the scholars looks like?
So, of course, that depended on what week we were on, right? Yeah. So So, as I stated earlier, like in the very beginning, we would come in and, they would have the panel there and allow us to speak to them about their experiences and their work experience and things like that, which was wonderful for us to have to experience. And then, we had days, again, where we talked about Voices from the Field, where they would bring someone in and talk about Voices from the Field, and they would share their experiences with us, which, again, I believe it was Rodney. I think it was Rodney who really talked about how that left an impact on us, which was definitely, I agree with you, because it allowed us to see them through their experience and let us know, okay, this is how this is going to work. This is what's going to happen. Of course, we got lunch every day, right? Let's talk about that. We got lunch every day. And each class was tailored to something different, whether it was supervision, whether we were talking about ethics, or even just talking about social work sometime, and just going back to talking about social work, because what that allowed you to do is to put things back together. Again, like we were talking about supervision. Am I being a good supervisor? Am I supporting my supervisee? What can I do differently to support them? And the biggest thing for me also was really being able to speak openly in the room without feeling like you really needed to curve your tongue because someone else was in the room. You were afraid of what they were going to think, or you didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, or also discussing about being in other meetings at work and not speaking how you wanted to speak. Really talking about, because I did this, now I'm ghetto or I'm urban or whatever, right? And because I want to speak with my hands, or I want to really express how I feel. My passion may come across like that. That does not mean I'm not an educated black woman who can't express how I feel. If that's how it comes across, that's how it comes across. So, really being able to express how you felt without feeling like there was no judgment in the room, none whatsoever. And one of the other things I wanted to talk about, again, really about the classmates, us really being a whole, somebody you would say, I'm going to the store. What she always ask for? Everybody know. If you go to the store, you better bring Michelle a Pepsi back. So, those are the things you remember. Those are the things you hold on to. Those are the things that really brought community for us. So those are just some of the great things, what our day would look like in the classroom. And plenty of laughter, just like this. Yes,
I'm so happy. One of the things that we did as part of the network was we created a listserv for the Relish cohort, right? So an opportunity for folks to email each other, stay connected. We really wanted to make sure that post the sessions, or even in between sessions or during sessions, whatever, that folks had like a forum where they could communicate with each other. And they never, ever used the listserv. And I was like, why are people not using this listserv? I would be emailing. No one ever used it. And it's because their WhatsApp group chat was popping. Okay, when I found out that they had the WhatsApp group chat, I was like, can I please join the WhatsApp group chat? Oh, I felt I had some serious FOMO because I told y'all I wanted to be a scholar. But and then I saw, so what Chinetta was showing about the community building aspect, and folks like really just every single day texting with each other, inviting each other to birthday parties and events and all types of stuff, really forming that community. And I realized after being in there for like 2 weeks, I was like, okay, y'all sending a lot of messages, but also like this wasn't for me. And I felt a little voyeuristic after a while. So I was like, let me take a step back. And I deleted myself from that WhatsApp group chat because I saw that it was a special place for that cohort. And if we do nothing else, if this group didn't do anything else, it was create a community of black leaders in supportive housing who have uplifted each other and really became friends. So I really do appreciate that. Somebody has a question? Okay.
Yeah. Hi there. So several times we've mentioned kind of the cone and the white leadership at the top, and often positions of professional development and advancement rely on those white leaders stepping down, moving on, yep. And we tend to stick around. So I'm wondering, have you done any work or talked to some of the providers in the network involved in this about creating additional positions or leadership positions, or how they're addressing creating more opportunities so that Black leaders are not just waiting for a white leader to move along before they can have their chance?
I'm not at Hunter right now, so I think that we're looking at a number of things. I think some of those things are based on organizations individually and the commitments that are being made in DEI efforts within organizations. I know for me personally, excuse me, I've always tried to figure out how can I create step positions where there aren't any. How can we create a senior service coordinator where we just had service coordinators? I just created this in the organization where I am now with our housekeepers. Created a senior housekeeper because I noticed that there was one housekeeper that always told the other ones what to do. There was one housekeeper that had plans and notes and could tell me what the structure was for their day. So I said, you know what? I want to create this position for you, senior housekeeper. Same thing with a front fire safety guard who was helping people with their computers and doing sort of other things with mail and everything else. You know what? I need you to be a lead fire safety guard for me. And so for me personally, is within budgetary constraints, because that's some of the things we talked about. And we did exercises. I would love to create a position for everything, but we also talked about the reality of that we can't do that for everything, but where we can and where we have some capacity and have some stretch, can we put that in? So yes, we talk about that, and we want to advocate for that, and we've even talked about it. We're not there yet. Boards, right? And starting at that space to be able to gain some of the buy-in to be able to do these sort of things, to have stretch positions, other positions where you can exercise your gifts in being ready for the next step at that organization or at other organizations. Because that's the other thing that I'm always saying to the folks who I work with, is that I'm trying to help you for here, and I hope you stay here, but I'm trying to help you for somewhere else as well. And so, that's up to you as you go. So that's a halfway answer to the question.
And it's really critical that it's not performative, right? I mean, I think to what Mark was saying, or what were you talking about? I mean, thinking about my own organization, which is growing, rapidly growing. There's a board meeting tonight, hopefully approve a larger budget for next year. And then thinking through that growth, right? Not-for-profits, always kind of come with a little bit of a mindset, but how are we planning for growth? How are you opening up the opportunities? In the last few years, we've even grown the C-suite. And our white leader at the top has been very intentional about saying, I'm going to hold out for a position who is going to represent diversity in leadership. So now our, they're a third of our Black leaders in the C-suite are Black, and there's, another Latinx representation as well. So it is for those white leaders to, make sure they're being intentional, make sure they're being aware, thinking about where those opportunities are, taking advantage of them, and being thoughtful. I will share, because we did this panel again. Sorry, you guys are our second panel at the CSH conference.
This one is better. This one is better.
Of course. But to share ideas, right, about equity ideas. I keep sharing, and I'm going to share again. I went to a panel there. A group in New Jersey. I think it's Nourish New Jersey. I remember that name now. They said they all looked in the mirror. They dismantled their board of directors. And they started over. They said, we don't have lived experience on this board. We don't have Black or brown people on this board. So they agreed to start over and rebuild a board that represented the populations that they serve. Like, mind blown, right? We don't have those conversations in New York City. New York City is, as much as we talk about racial equity, probably compared to New Jersey, we're a lot more diverse as the state of New Jersey is certainly. So I want to share out those ideas so that it gives people the courage to do it.
All right. Well, now, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Fatima. I have a question about, I know you guys are all together, and it's like you spend 6 weeks together, and it's like an incubator. being a black woman, sometimes when you move up, you feel unsupported, maybe insecure, imposter syndrome. You might be the first person to be well educated or the first person in your family to, move into a position of higher power, or even you may have never had a black supervisor. So now that you are being a black woman or a black person in general, and being over people, how do you, after they leave, or how do you deal with like imposter syndrome? Like, let's say the cohort graduated, the certificates are done, and they did great together, and you have a community that supports them and they can always reach back. But what happens when they call back and say, hey, I got into this position, but I also feel like I'm questioning myself now, but I wasn't questioning myself before. Like, how is that being dealt with? Because that's something that we read about a lot, and we hear on social media a lot about, when black people do get into power, that they are put there to be a cleanup person or to be the fall guy. So how are you preparing, cohorts for that kind of imposter syndrome or questioning of themselves that comes with being black? Sorry if that's loaded, but this is a real question.
What a fantastic question. And a couple of months ago during Women's History Month, I hosted a webinar with some colleagues of mine called "Is it imposter syndrome or is it racism?" And one of the things that truly came out of that was, it's not you. It's those microaggressions. It's those macroaggressions. It's what Chinetta was saying about you not being able to bring your whole self. And when you do, you're looked at differently because people are thinking about the way that your affect is, or the way you move your hands, or the way you engage with folks. I don't have an answer for that question other than to say, like, it's not there. There is a. You have an answer for that, Alicia? We have been trained to think that it's us. We don't deserve this position. We don't deserve to be here. We've been promoted, arbitrarily, or just because we're black, and this whole idea of affirmative action. Like, no, one of the things that always stick out to me that Fred Shack says is that, black folks are more educated because we have to be, more qualified because we have to be, more experienced because we have to be. We just don't have the opportunities, right? So I would say if you are feeling that imposter syndrome, take a look around and think about the ways that those microaggressions are making you feel that way, and the way that you're engaging with the non-black folks in your organization. And if it's truly you, because it's not, I promise you.
I just want to piggyback on that. Just say, as a classroom, as the students, we depend upon each other. We call each other and say, hey, I'm having a rough day today, or this has happened, and we all will get together on that chat and start saying, hey, listen, if you need to call me, don't do this, don't worry about it, it is not you. All the things that Tiara just explained is how we support each other as a group, as a classroom, as the students, just so that that if you was ever to become a part of this, we will hope that this the same thing you would get from your cohort as well. But we support each other to help us with that.
Great question.
I wanted to respond to the question about organizational accountability. I served as a mentor, and one of the things that I took seriously as a mentor and as someone who had relative power and privilege at my organization is that I developed a proposal to continue to support the scholars that came from my organization. The beauty about the curriculum, Relish's curriculum, is that it draws on very specific departments. So you can build a whole proposal that extrapolates and picks up where Relish leaves off, and then go back internally into your organization to say, okay, when it comes to developing policy, if we have a QA/QI department, who's going to help from that department to continue the learning? If it's board development or interest in C-suite and executive management, if the executive director agreed to sponsor a scholar, then I would imagine, or maybe we should hold that executive director accountable to meet on some regular basis with that scholar to also help to have initial conversations about what it means to be in the C-suite and what's necessary. Same thing when it comes to your fiscal and finance department. So the curriculum very closely ties to the work and the business every day that's done in our organizations. And it's up to us as mentors who hold positions of leadership within our organizations to continue to do the work, to continue to support the scholars, and to continue to beat the drum with our executive team when necessary.
I just wanted to comment to the individual that was asking about what would we do if individuals came and had this imposter syndrome. I think I served as a mentor, and most of the mentors, and I'd say all of us, still continue to keep in touch with mentees. It wasn't just the 6 weeks and the 6 weeks after. It's still that check-in. And although maybe a lot of the mentors have navigated some of those things, they're still navigating systems themselves. So it's still that collaborative conversation going on, that support is going on. And what Chinetta said in the group, like the mentors spoke, the mentees spoke, and it wasn't about, oh, I'm going to say something about someone in CUCS and they're going to go back and say it. It was a safe space. The mentees could come in and say what they were experiencing at their organization, whether it be a lantern person talking in the group. It didn't come back. You know, it was safe. You could express how you're feeling. Maybe you showed up to a meeting and you didn't feel heard and you wanted to talk that out. Or you're feeling like maybe there's no clear expectations in your roles. I could be saying, well, I'm feeling the same thing. Just because you're at a certain level, that doesn't mean you've escaped the navigating the world. Right. You're still talking. We're still walking the walk together. So I think that's what was very important, is that you were looking at someone who experienced and is experiencing and understanding what you're going through.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Ali. I just wanted to say I salute you on your effort on this initiative. It's definitely needed in our community. But I just wanted to ask you about another aspect that's also not being highlighted, which is the fact that a lot of these organizations that we work for, they have big teams of grant writers, right? They have these super grant writing teams, and it's a lot of community-based organizations that started by black people in the community that cannot get into the grant pool. You feel what I'm saying? Because they can't compete, or they don't know how to write the grant. So is it possible that this mentorship could be expanded to include people who are starting community-based organizations where we have black people in leadership positions? Peace.
Yeah, no, we heard that a lot, right? Yep. If we think about what these scholars were looking for and what they said what they want to do and their vision for themselves in 5 years is to start their own organizations, right? But starting with the foundations that we're helping them fill, right? Like making sure they understand budgets, making sure they understand all the HR issues, right? These are the sort of core of the foundation. But I hear you, it's about resources, 1,000%, 1,000%. So it's what all of us are doing on a big picture level of trying to break down the system, but it's slow. All this to say, we're teaching people for the most part how to work within the system. Absolutely. But we're all of us every day need to be continuing to help change the system, right? So we don't have the imposter syndrome, so that other people retire, we're making room. All of those things.
Hello, hi. So I was part of the inaugural class cohort. Thank you. So I want to piggyback up a few things. You're right. So we're not waiting for anyone to step down. We're going to start creating for ourselves. That is what we learned from Relish, what was poured into us. So we're all making different steps to that goal. Personally, I already have an MPA, but because I went to Relish, I'm starting Hunter in the fall to get my MSW. So it's not about waiting for someone to step down and move out of our way. We're going to make the way. We're going to pave the road. And we're going to do it and bring us along. because we need to and we have to. And that's what I wanted to say. We're not waiting. We're going to do it.
I just had a quick question to kind of piggyback off of the beautiful black women. I feel so supported in here. Yes. That in the cohort, oftentimes being a woman of leadership, a black woman in leadership, that depression and anxiety is looked at as irritability in a lot of black women. And I want to know, like, how is that being addressed, whether we're focusing on self-care or kind of just talking through it in the cohort to kind of get them prepped for being in this position as a black woman, but also going through bouts of missing self-care because you're so focused on your program, you're so focused on being, you know, your personal life, which bleeds into your work life, and kind of being able to balance that so you are not experiencing, you know, those bouts.
Dr. Clare, you want to talk about that?
So, I did hot yoga for a long time because I had to, right? You're working long hours, you have families. The OIR program is such a program where we say folks needed to come back to school, but they could not afford to give up their jobs. So we talk about self-care continuously in the program. And it could be simple as taking a walk. And while we're talking, trust that practicing while black, that is hard, that you still have to take care of yourself in the process because you're still experiencing the same thing. And I like what you said about doing and experiencing at the same time, right? So how do you hold both? But self-care is such an important thing. You don't sleep because you're worried. You know, you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you can't go back to sleep. And before you know it, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's time to start moving again. Yes. But you have to find time to sleep and take care of yourself. You have to replenish. I was reading this book earlier that sleep is resistance. And, you know...
the nap ministry. You know,
and I was like, you know, coming from the Caribbean, I know I can sleep. But I didn't know it was resistance. I just know that if I want to sleep, I'm going to go sleep. So, you know, it's really taking care of yourself and talking to each other. And Jeanette just walked into the room. And we have a group that we meet continuously once a month for dinner. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fred, Jeanette, Amanda, Vanessa, we used to work together. And we've been doing it now about, what, 25 years, Jeanette? Yeah. We meet once a month for dinner. Mm-hmm. So they know that I pick my food. And they'll tell me, Pat, stop picking out the food. But, you know, all fun and joke aside, self-care is really important. You know, and sometimes you get irritable, and it's not that you're irritable because it's because you're passionate about the work, right? And when you're being asked, well, why you think that way? And I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. You know, what do you mean by why do I think that way? I'm a black woman in America, right? And so therefore, I'm going through some of the same things that we see our service users are going through. How many of us have relationship issues? Right? How many of us know that milk went up so much?
Eggs. Don't forget that.
Right? Milk. Eggs. I don't eat eggs, right? So we're struggling, right? Rent. The rent is too damn high. We're still talking about it. So we're still figuring out the stressors that we're doing, yet we have to go into the office and perform. Because we have others that are dependent on us. And so how do we then find room for others so that we can talk, go dancing, go yoga, go walk, right? And what is some of the things that we need to do together?
I want to, if I can just jump in, sorry. But I want to also try and answer that question a little bit. When our group cohort finished, we went out, we did all these other things, we had our group chat going, and one of the first things we did collectively was have a Zoom call with all of us, and one of the first things we talked about was self-care and taking a break and stepping away. And we had to realize, you know, we talked a lot about all this resting, and we realized like it's not just enough to rest. You can't just break and sleep and not work your way out of it. You also have to kind of restructure what you're going back to. So that you can come back to it and tackle it in a way that's not just going to get you back to the same burnt out space that you were in before that.
And burnout is real.
Extremely. I would say we as black women, we have, again, been conditioned to suppress our feelings, and then that comes out in anxiety and depression. I'm not a social worker, but I'm sure a lot of you are. And think about what you would tell one of your tenants, right, or someone that you're working with. And sometimes we give the best advice, but we don't take it. We know the things that we should be doing with ourselves. We know to move your body. We know to drink water. We know to get sleep. We know to put the phone down. We know to stop texting that person back. But we don't do it. We'll tell everybody else to do it, but we won't, right? So thinking, like, we know some of these things, but we've been conditioned to not do it ourselves. So I would say that rest is resistance, read the NAP ministry, but also think about if you were not yourself and you were talking to someone else, take your own best advice, you know? And maybe, I mean, this is something that as we're thinking about the 2023 cohort and beyond, something that we can begin to build into the curriculum as one of those voices from the field or something like that. So we love to hear these ideas and thinking about ways that we can actually make this program actually work for the people that are participating in it, and thinking about something like that and building it into the curriculum, I think is a really great idea.
I just want to say that when it comes to self-care, one of the things you have to be willing to do, and I think it's difficult for us as women, black women also, is that you got to be willing to give up the cape. You can't be superwoman all the time. Okay. Give up the cape. Let somebody else take it off, give it off, drop it on the floor, walk away with it, burn it, buy a new one. Give up the cape, but you have to be willing to do it, because if you're not, you know, you're never really going to be able to get self-care if you don't give it up. When you think about the job, the family, the friends, we are conditioned to care for others. And sometimes you just got to take it off and just say, you know what? I need a break. You know, I need a break. Forget them kids. Forget that job. Forget that man. Forget the pet, the cat, the dog. I need a break. So just be willing to give up the cape.
That's right. And it's okay. The problems will be there when you get back anyway. So
they won't die.
They don't have to, or maybe they won't, because maybe it's time for somebody else to come in and fix it, you know? Look, cocktail hour is happening right outside in about 3 minutes, or upstairs in about 3 minutes. So one more question or one final thought, or, you know, another scholar or mentor, or Jeanette, I'm going to put you on the spot if anyone wants to say something.
Jonathan has the mic. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, Jonathan has it. Okay, where's Jonathan?
Hello.
Oh, right there.
So Mike is.
So listen, this was a work of love.
Hold on, Jeanette.
I will say that I'm so proud that we got through the first one. Fingers crossed we'll have the second one coming up very shortly. Announcements will be out. I am so proud of everybody who went through the program, everybody who spoke in the program. I got to give ourselves some props, because this was voluntary. We are still seeking money to make this something that has a coordinator. So if there's any funders in the room and you would like to fund this program, we'd be very happy. But also, like, the most important part of this was creating a cohort. I will say, Pat mentioned the cohort that I was a part of from 25 years, right? I got fired. Who did I cry with? You know, I get promoted. Who do I, you know, celebrate with? I'm having a problem. That's who I call. And so what we're hoping is, as people move up, when you have an HR problem, you're going to say, you'll be in your chat, do you know anything? Can you refer? I need a lawyer. I needed this, because this is what we do for each other. And I think it's important that everybody has a cohort, a group of professional people who you trust, who know you, that move with you, support you, and also will pull your coat and say, listen, girl, you were wrong in that one. You know? And that's what we're trying to build for emerging black leaders. And I think it's important for everybody to have, but I think it's rare among black people to have it as you move up in certain fields. So this is an important thing, and I'm just really proud of it.
Jonathan.
So I'll try to be quick. So I was hearing all these harmonious stories. It was great, and I was thinking, wow, I never really had that, and that's actually a lie. I actually have a great colleague here that I have a chat with, that we talk about things, we practice interview questions with. We do the most. But while all this is great, I think that I forgot who mentioned it, but like as we know, everything's a pyramid, right? So as you get closer and closer to the top, there's less and less positions. And I think that was most disheartening, and while this is, again, all harmonious, is that not just in the organization I'm in now, but organizations I've worked in the past, whether it's hospitals or other CBOs, that it can get cutthroat so much that the people who look like you, have the same stories as you, try to put you down because they don't see you. It's not because they hate you. It's because if you get up, that's one more person they have to compete with for the next position that comes up. And no. We try to apply together. So, we'll split the salary. No, but what happens is, as much as I think it's great that we share that and we like rooting each other on, it's so disheartening when the people above you, or even sometimes on the same level as you, are rooting for your demise because that's the only way they're going to be able to go up. And it's nothing against you. It's really about them. But you still have to work within that system. And I think that's just, it's so negative. And I don't know if this necessarily addresses that, but I don't know if an agency should have like an HR group that kind of messes with that, but it's really disheartening to think about.
No, but that's why I said you work within the system, but we're also trying to dismantle the system. We have to, right? We have to dismantle that thinking and that people come with, right? The old way. We want to think that post-2020, we're creating and we're forging new ways, right?
As you move up, right, let's face it, it's who you know. Right, so who referred you? I mean, a friend called me up and said they were in the middle of a search, and they called me up and they said, Jeanette, just apply. Just call them up and tell them you're interested, right? If I hadn't gotten that call, I wouldn't have known. So hopefully, as people move up, you are moving other people up with you. Think about your succession. As you start to be leaving, who can you recommend? Does your agency trust your recommendation for who should follow you? And so that's what we want to build. That's what we want to build. And obviously there will always be haters. Don't get me wrong. I do understand. They do exist. They are real. They are real. So I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish. But as people move up, you bring your crew with you. You bring your crew with you. And the bigger the group, the more likely that you will find somebody who actually fits that position. And if you're in a trusted position, hopefully they will trust your recommendation. It's not going to always work, but that is what we should be doing. If there's a posting at your job now, and you say, you know what, I know somebody who would be good for this job, call them up. I know they didn't think about leaving. Hey, try. Also, interview. I think, let me just say this, and probably other CEOs are going to not be happy with me. I think people should be interviewing all the time. Two things that happen when you interview all the time. You either realize how much you love your existing job and you want to keep it, or you say, there's a lot of interesting things out there that would challenge me, right? And sometimes it's just to keep your skills up so that when you do have to interview, you're not like, what am I going to do? Anyway. Listen, everybody, the reception has started upstairs, so